Hi folks, I'm Tarah Wheeler Van Vlack. I'm the CEO of Fizzmint, a startup here in Seattle that handles human resources automation. And I am doing a special broadcast today about how to be a 10x coder. It's the human being we're all looking for. I only know a couple of these mythical, magical creatures, which is one of the reasons why every job application calls them a unicorn. One of them is my distinguished and amazing co-founder, Liz Dahlstrom, and the other person that I'm sure of is a 10x coder is the gentleman you're seeing here today. His name is Raymond Hardman, and Raymond Hardman was for 9 years, the chief infrastructure architect for Symantec. He's also the technical lead for Silent Circle, which is an exploding startup out there on the East Coast handling encrypted communications. Raymond is one of the greatest coders I've ever met in my life, and the reason for that is he doesn't wait to ask permission. He tells people what needs to happen, and then he goes and does it. Well, he doesn't break too much stuff in the meantime, hopefully. So, Raymond, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. All right. I hear that Raymond hasn't ever done a video broadcast before, so everybody be nice, or possibly don't. That's fine. Just, send all of the rotten stuff to my Twitter account and not his. If you'd like to follow him, he's on Twitter at Raymond Hardman. And I would like to ask Raymond to tell us a couple things about the way that he structures how he codes, how he starts the decision-making process about what to do, how to do it, and why he works the way he does. So Raymond, how do you make up your mind that something needs to happen, and then why do you do it? What do you let get in your way?
Well, usually there's like a set of business drivers that are causing what you're actually working on.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, I mostly code for companies, not for my own free time. But usually, using those business drivers, I can determine what's critical, or at least appears to be critical, and using consulting other people in the organization to determine those priorities.
Okay.
There's also non-functional or more technical drivers to enable you to be able to work faster. So your tooling or building your toolbox as well.
What do you mean by drivers? When you say drivers that are technical and non-technical, what do you mean by that?
Drivers are pretty much requirements, or what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay, so say that I tell you, build me a widget. What do you do?
Well, I typically try to follow a requirements analysis type of process. So, basically consult the individuals that are responsible. If it's just an individual, basically sit down and discuss what the widget's supposed to accomplish, what it's supposed to do, and then from that determine the inputs and outputs.
You're using a lot of technical language to describe something that seems to me to be innate in you, that is just part of your character. And it seems like part of your character is to say, even though I'm not exactly sure how to make this work, I'm going to take a crack at it. And the thing that I think that has most impressed me about you is watching you make decisions on your own without waiting for permission. You always make sure that you're not going to break things, but you move ahead. You're constantly moving ahead. What are times that you have been held back by requirements rather than just working on what you want to?
Usually requirements can hold me back or tend to be walls when they typically, how do you say, when they don't have boundaries, when they're not structured in a sense in which you're aware of what you're capable of doing to solve that problem. What are the people, what are the processes, what are the resources that are available to solve that requirement. If you're tasked with digging a hole but not with your hands and you're not given any tools, how do you dig the hole? It becomes a much harder problem versus being given the requirements of, well, here's a Home Depot gift card, go buy whatever you need to dig the hole. And then from that, you would look at the aspects of, do I need to rent a backhoe because they want me to dig a 40-foot deep hole, or do they just want me to dig a 3-foot deep post hole?
Okay. I've watched people have conversations before on emails where everyone decides that something needs to happen. And the thing that I notice about you is when everyone decides the thing needs to happen, often one of the questions people have is, okay, how should we solve this problem? And one of the big differences I see in the 10x coder and the unicorn coder is that by the time people have gotten around to asking, how do we solve this problem, you've already posted an example of something, of a possible solution to the problem. And often that wins just because it works and you got it done first. Why do you operate that way rather than hanging back and letting other people chime in on how we can solve the problem?
I'm not. It's more of, I guess, the overactive impatience nature.
There we go. All right. Tell me more about it.
When you after a while, when you've done this for a very long period of time, certain things become more nature. So you tend not to be at the same level. And with technology being a very diverse and very deep field, most of the people that are in the room come from various backgrounds, various focuses. So their nature starts at a different perspective. For me, having done this a very long time and starting out when we didn't have readily available, storage mediums, so you had to write the code every time you wanted to run the code. There was no copy paste or load from tape.
When did you start programming?
Back in 81, 82. So probably when I was about 5 or around there. So really early.
So mega nerd. How did you start? What was the thing that made you love it?
I don't know. It just was a curiosity that just never wore off.
Okay.
You could make it do things.
Okay.
So, and at 5, you're not thinking very coherently.
Okay. Did you start by building machines or writing code first?
I started writing code first on a Commodore 64 and BASIC.
Awesome. All right.
BASIC, morphing from the screen imprints from there to the printed magazines to then morphing those into my own weird fantasy worlds.
Okay. Very, very awesome. All right. I know we've got several questions, and I wanted to start getting to those. We're going to do some Q&A for about 10 minutes here. And I've got Twitter up. If anyone wants to ask questions, they can do so either on Twitter, via email, or in the Q&A application here in the Hangout. Often, Raymond, I get people who ask me questions that they want me to keep their name out of it. And often that's because people are looking for jobs or they're concerned about discrimination and such. So I've got some really great questions that have come to us via email today because everyone wants to know how to be that unicorn ninja rock star developer that every single company is always posting in their rec documentation, which is bull, as we all know. Except when you actually find that person. It's just they're far more rare than one might expect. And I think it's a character situation. I think we're finding out now that you're a curious person who wants to see what happens rather than worrying too much about the asking why. You're going to try something out, which is a really great mechanism for curiosity. So I'm going to pull up my Twitter here and see if there's anything that's come up initially, but I do have one great question that came up in email, and I'm not going to use the person's name because I know that they're looking for a job right now and have one. So here's the question. This is from a young programmer who sees all of the ninja and the rockstar and the 10x and the unicorn language in documentation, and she is hesitant about saying that she's that person, even though I happen to know she's someone who's very, very good and could one day be that 10x coder. How do you demonstrate when you're looking for jobs and looking for new positions that you have those qualities? How does she do that? What would you tell her?
I think you mentioned it with curiosity. I think expressing one's curiosity for the environment, for the technology, for the industry that they're approaching is extremely critical because that shows more passion than drive. and passion can lead to more passionate people, and then it helps drive people as well. But as people want to look to expand and grow, they want to see that there's more to it than just syntax.
Okay. I see that. I think that people want to see that passion. They want to see that there's that oomph behind what it is that you're doing. And I think she's just a little shy about describing herself in that way. And if we can find like different code words almost, that would be the way to do it. I think like 10 years ago, Ninja and Rockstar were the code words. Now we're calling them 10x coders. We got to invent a new code word for this, because she's got that capacity. And how do you demonstrate that curiosity when someone just looks you up on Google? I mean, how do you, Raymond, demonstrate that in your work and what you do?
It's not being, ironically fearful in that section of knowledge. So it's being able to just blindly illustrate the curiosity of what you've investigated, what you've been looking into. It's only harnessing those tools that you have, which is through that curiosity of looking deeper into a different programming language or a different tooling or templating aspect.
Okay. Could you give me a very specific example, like on GitHub, some open source project, something that would really intrigue you if you saw someone do it?
Not certain. Like, how do you mean? Like a project that should be done, or?
Let me give you an example. One of the pieces of advice that I give people that want to be hired at a company is, if that company has an open source repo up on GitHub, start submitting pull requests. See if you can get in, because you're really good at that company's code. And that's a good way to do it, it seems like to me. But does that demonstrate the kind of curiosity and jump in at nest that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's definitely from a very targeted approach. Another aspect is the various components that build up the aspects of what technology runs on today. From an operating system to the various components from that, such as there's various open source automation tool sets such as Chef. One can get involved in learning how to use that tooling, which then gives them those abilities that are readily useful. They also then start understanding the processes in which those tools are automating. So they understand, for instance, system automation. If you mess with the tooling for that, such as Chef or Puppet or Salt, you start to learn the various processes that they're automating, that if you were to abstract that into a building something like a house, you could abstract those processes into steps that would normally be done, so that you can gain an understanding of how the house is to be built, so that you can build it to a different specification.
It seems like I'm going to try to restate this one. It seems like what you're saying is, if you are someone who's a front-end web developer, don't just be a front-end web developer. Demonstrate that you care enough to figure out how it was that Django works and what was the process that made it functioning. Can you do a little bit of everything? That everybody should be able to do a little bit of everything, yes?
Or at least have the understanding of it. It's the difference from, I guess, being able to drive a car and then potentially, if you were to be forced to, have to change the oil in the car.
Okay, yeah, you can operate the car just fine, but if one tiny little thing goes wrong, then you should be able to at least have some kind of understanding of the fact that the car is not running on fairy dust?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
A traditional adage that technology is built on top of turtles. It's turtles all over. It really gets to that you can start out as an operator, as most people do now, or used to. Now they're starting with tablets as opposed to laptops and QWERTY-based keyboards, more thumbs. And so because of that abstraction, it takes longer to get to the foundation, so that you can then change when that technology, let's say, they moved from a manual transmission car to an automatic transmission. That took a period of time to transition to where people didn't have to learn a skill set. It's not that skill set's not usable. In fact, when you go and end up with a manual transmission car, it's, either not operable if you don't have that skill set, or it's a skill set that you could have retained or still maintained.
That's a great way to put it.
So I mean, there's like, I mean, not that people don't use it anymore, but I spent 10, 12 years administrating and engineering for Solaris operating system environments. They don't exist anymore, but the basis
Nerd. Yeah.
is very foundational.
Yeah.
And the products are still borrowed from. And they are still in existence and used, just not in the wider community.
Okay. But the skill set that you gained in working with an operating system, regardless of what brand it had, tells you at least a piece of how every operating system works, is what you're going for here?
Fundamentally.
Awesome. Let me ask you, who's the best coder you've ever worked with and why?
I've worked with so many, I don't know if I want to call any out publicly.
Well, you know what the next question's going to be, so you can name names on this one, but don't name it on the next one.
Usually, the ones that amaze me are the polyglots, the ones that are so bilingual in programming languages and that can pretty much spitball a poem per se.
Wow.
That's something that is an amazing skill set, and there's a lot of people out there that can do that, that need help in regards to understanding what to use or what to speak or what to write.
Well, give them credit. Who are some of the people you know that are the most amazing ones that you've ever worked with?
Jeez.
If you want to.
You know, there's, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want
It's
to call
fine.
them.
That's cool. It's cool because the next question I was going to ask you is not about the best coders, but what are the qualities of the worst coders that you work with? Obviously, don't give me names on this one. I mean, unless you want to, in which case we've turned into the E! True Hollywood story of the development of Silicon Valley. But what are the qualities of the worst coders that you've worked with?
Lack of understanding what they're building on top of. It's the Oracle developer versus the ANSI SQL developer. So somebody understanding a third layer application versus a second layer application.
Explain third layer versus second layer application.
So I would view it as let's say, learning the actual product versus the technology.
Okay. So sort of like you could develop out a chess game program, but and just by knowing the moves. But unless you've actually played chess and you understand what it is, why you do it, you know, there's not going to be any life or heart to what you're doing, and you may make weird mistakes that might not have happened if you hadn't understood the game.
It would be more like Star Trek 3D chess versus normal chess. If you didn't have the concept of normal chess and only knew 3D chess, you're not going to be able to potentially design a 2D chess that's like the traditional chess that's played.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Have you ever played that? I've totally played that. It's awesome.
I've tried, but go so far back when I've attempted.
It's a blast, I'll tell you. Okay. How do you make decisions when it comes to how far you how do you know you're not wasting time and gone to a specific point?
You kind of slowed up on that one, but
how do you make decisions about how far to go when programming before you stop and ask for feedback?
That's a hard one. It really depends upon the aspect and the skill set of the team or the community that's around. It's hard to gauge because sometimes questioning or phoning a friend or options can actually create more of a time drain or consume more time. It really depends. It really is helpful to know kind of the people, the process, and the technology that's amongst your ecosystem. When you are delving out in the far fetches of it, you're going to probably spend a lot of late hours. Potentially having to delve, into header files and in the code bases of other further more obscure LinkedIn libraries or sub projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any last word of advice for somebody who wants to get a job and is scared by those 10x in a requisition?
I think the biggest thing is to always be honest. So if you don't have the answer to the question, that's when you should illustrate your curiosity in regards to how you would potentially solve that question. But definitely be, forthright in not knowing the direct answer, or illustrating that it wasn't clear. Sometimes questions may be ambiguous.
That's a great phrase. Illustrate your curiosity. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Raymond. I really appreciated having you here today. I hope this helps some of the younger coders who are trying to figure out how to get that first job. Here's one of the greatest in the business, folks, and it was a pleasure having you today. Thank you so much, Raymond. Have a good day, folks.
Thanks, Sarah.